Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everyone, my name's Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. I've got Minh with me again today. Hi Minh.
Hello Debbie, how are you?
Good.
Hello everyone.
Yeah. Today we're going to do a latest edition of Frequently Asked Questions.
Yeah, so we've done this a few times, about 4 or 5 times the last year and a half or so. So it'd be good to touch base and cover some questions that people normally send them to us, and we always cover it anyway. So might as well answer the questions together, you and I, Debbie, on this podcast.
Yeah.
So our listeners can hear what our thoughts are on these random questions I've chosen today, okay?
Yeah.
Question number 1 from Richard. Hi, I was just wondering how I could list our SDA for sale with you and what the costs are. Debbie?
Okay. Look, generally we only take on properties that are tenanted. So yes, if your property is tenanted, we would be very happy to talk to you about listing it. We charge 3% plus GST on settlement only. So there's no upfront costs that as you would normally pay with a regular real estate agent.
Off market?
It's sold off market, advertised through our own website, through our referral sales partners and our own database. So that is basically the procedure. Now, just a quick run through of how it works. Sometimes people want to know more information about what we need. We need quite a lot of information. We need obviously the details of the property itself. We need the outgoings. We need things like floor plans, photographs. And of course, now there are new real estate laws that have come in. We will also be required to do a verification on the ownership of the property. This is for the new AML, CTF, anti-money laundering laws that have come in. So we will be asking for, if you own it through a trust, all of the information on the trust and the beneficiaries. So quite a bit of information that is needed. Oh, and I didn't mention things like the provider agreements, head lease agreements, those sorts of things. And of course, proof of income. So there is quite a bit of information that is required, but once we have all of that, then we get together a marketing agreement that is non-exclusive, and then we can take it from there.
I also want to touch base, David, on this topic. We also want to know, as on behalf of our future buyers, why are you selling it? How long have you owned it for? Who did you build it with?
When was it built?
What has been the turnover of providers or participants in the house? Just a bit of a history of this property, yeah?
Of course, because the prospective buyers first thing they ask is, why is the owner selling? So, we just want to get a bit of history into the property, because we know none of these properties are particularly old. Most of them have been built within the last 2 or 3 years. So to get a good background on the property and, of course, why you're selling is also important.
Yeah. The next question is from Megan. She says, I have an NDIS property in Townsville that I need to urgently sell. I've been trying to sell it for over a year through another provider. However, I need to now liquidate this as soon as possible. Can you please advise if you can help with the sale and what other next steps would be? Thanks.
Yeah, look, I did speak to this person, and due to a change in personal circumstances, she does need to sell the property. Top of my head, I can't remember if there was a tenant in there, but basically if there is no tenant, then we would recommend going to a regular real estate agent to sell it, because in this current climate, to sell a vacant SDA property, particularly in an area that has a good supply of SDAs, is very difficult. But if you were to go through a regular residential real estate agent and sell it on the open market, you're probably not going to get as much as you would get for an SDA, but you're not going to sell it as a vacant SDA, essentially.
And by the way, the words there were, I've been trying to sell it for a year with our provider. So therefore, something's gone wrong.
Something has there. So if she's got her own provider
trying to sell it,
maybe they don't have the market to sell it to. Yeah, so I'm not sure. If you have been marketing it through your SDA provider, does that mean that they're also a real estate agent or have links to marketers, or how are they doing that? And yeah, if it is, look, a year on the market is a long time. Having said that, we do have properties on our listings for quite some time. They are slow to turn over, but after a year, especially if you really need to move it now because of a change in personal circumstances, then yeah, let's talk.
Here is another inquiry, Debbie, from Nandani. I have an empty 4-bedroom house. I can take 3 people with active disabilities. I can look after them for 6 hours every day during the daytime.
Yeah, this was an interesting one.
This is a bit of a weird question.
Yeah.
I don't know how to respond to this question.
Okay.
How would you respond?
Yeah, I already did email Nandini. So, look, obviously it's not an SDA property. Nandini thinks that it is suitable for NDIS. Potentially she is a caregiver, and she has a house that she could look after participants in. So I think Nandini's best option in this situation, because if it was an SDA property, she would have, I'm sure, mentioned that in the email. It's not going to be relative to the SDA market, but it very definitely could be a potential to rent it to a SIL provider. Now, if she's a caregiver herself, she may have contacts in the industry. If not, then she is best off to reach out to local NDIS providers in the area to see if they are in need of a rental property to take over. She's not going to get more than regular residential rent, maybe a slight premium, but not much more. But if she is doing this really to mainly, get NDIS participants a home, then this is a really good option for her. So just for those people who might be wondering how you find NDIS providers in any particular area, the NDIS website has a tool called Provider Finder. So if you just Google NDIS Provider Finder, you'll be able to do a search on things like postcode or suburb, the type of provider. In this instance, you'd be looking for the providers that provide daily supports in a shared living environment, I think is the terminology. You can narrow it down by providers that are registered, or those that have been active in the last 12 months, I think, and those who have a head office in the area. So using all those different kinds of criteria, you can narrow it down to the providers, and you can print off a list or download a list of the providers with their contact details, and you can reach out to them that way.
Okay. Our next and last one is a big email here, but we've already been through this whole process, you and I and Caitlin, Debbie. So his name is June. He owns a complex of apartments in Chadstone in Melbourne. He's completed 9 apartments, 1 or 2 bedrooms units in Chadstone, located next to Holmes Glen and the Matthew Flinders Hotel, designed for improvability with potential for fully accessible accommodation where appropriate. Yeah, he's basically asking for help to help find providers and participants. So
yeah,
we'll give you a story here of your chat with him, please, Debbie. You and Caitlin.
Yeah. Caitlin and I had a chat because we feel that the best way we could help him is through our participant procurement service, SDA Housing Assist. I got a bit more information about the property from June when we chatted. There are 9 apartments in the complex with 2 OOAs, so that's split over 2 different levels. 2 apartments are 2 bedrooms, the rest are 1 bedrooms. Now, when he said they're IL with a potential to be FA, I thought, how does that work? What has happened is they've been built to meet improved livability standards, but they are bigger. They've been made more wheelchair accessible. They're not necessarily going to meet the actual FA, fully accessible design guidelines to achieve FA certification. But for a participant in a wheelchair who has fully accessible funding, they may well be a suitable home. We know that we're not seeing a lot of or any IL funding approvals in recent times, but certainly there are still people being funded for fully accessible. So if all of his apartments can be suitable for participants who've got that funding, not all of them obviously, but some of them, that would be probably his best option to make them as accessible as possible. He actually spent 3 months renovating the units after they were built to achieve wheelchair accessibility. And so it's actually a really good location because I think it's north of Dandenong in that southern mid-metro area of Melbourne. We know that there is, as we've spoken about many times, the participants being moved, phased out of group homes. So there's sure to be a few in that area that might potentially like to live on their own in an apartment and have the right level of funding, or when they have their funding upgraded from their group home status, it might be suitable. So that's why we thought that this is definitely a potential to still get tenanted, even though they're IL apartments.
And just in case you're giving us a confused look, listening to this audio going, hang on, getting a HBS in an IL or FA or whatever, okay, let's just go back to a few conversations we've had, Debbie, you and me, with David Whitelaw from Adapt Housing. Well, even he told us he can get a HBS funded participant into a robust house. So
we've currently selling a house that is a robust house with a fully accessible participant. So the participants don't have to have the same level of funding or category of funding to match the house, as long as they're occupational therapist, support coordinator, family, all of those stakeholders feel that the property, that the participant can live in that property adequately.
Because you might get a behavioural problem participant in a wheelchair who has to live in a robust house. Yeah. Is it extra large? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's an extra large robust that has the turning circles to support a wheelchair, then fine. So it really comes down to the participant at the end of the day and what they need in their living environment. So it's not strict rules that if someone has FA funding, they can't live in an IL dwelling. It does affect the income, of course. The IL income is lower than FA and only the lowest amount is paid. But there's not necessarily a massive amount of difference between IL and FA apartment funding. So at the end of the day, if you've got a participant who's funded for FA and they want to move into an IL apartment, then it's a doable thing.
Awesome. So Debbie, this almost wraps up our session, this frequently asked questions. What do you see has been the common inbound questions coming our way the last few months, do you think?
I would say the majority of queries coming in have been people wanting to sell. We're still getting people that are, I guess, hearing for the first time, or it's sort of now come onto their radar for whatever reason about investing in SDA. They're new to it. They are still not really particularly au fait with how it all works. So we still get newbie potential investors, those wanting to sell, and probably more providers who are interested in buying as well.
I think we're done, Debbie.
I think so, yeah. So look, keep your questions coming in. We're always happy to help you out, even if we're not able to assist you directly. Happy to have a free chat, a first consultation, and give you some advice as to where you should be going in your journey, wherever it is in the NDIS SDA world.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.